High Observer Zelnoth adjusted his compound eyes as he floated in the observation chamber above the Varan system. Below him, through the transparent floor, two fleets faced each other across the black void of space. This was his 234th conflict arbitration, and he expected it would proceed like all the others. Some threats would be made. A few ships would exchange fire. Eventually, one side would yield, and the Galactic Union Council would mediate the territorial dispute. Civilization required order, and order required rules. The Catharn Dominion had brought 20 warships to dispute the Varan Commonwealth's claim to the mining rights in the Outer Traverse. It was an overwhelming show of force. The Varans had only 3 defensive vessels, ancient things that had not seen real combat in generations. Commander Vectar of the Catharn flagship Crimson Talon was already broadcasting his victory speech, his scaled face twisted in what passed for a smile among his species. The Varans will surrender within the hour, Vectar announced across all channels. Their resistance is pointless. We offer generous terms. Vacate the mining facilities and we will allow safe passage for all civilians. Ambassador Theloria of the Varans appeared on the communication screen. Her pale blue skin had turned almost white with stress and her delicate features trembled. She was young for an ambassador, barely 200 cycles old, and this was her first major crisis. Zelnoth felt sympathy for her. The Varans were a peaceful people, artists and philosophers who had never developed a strong military tradition. They had no chance against the Catharn. We cannot abandon our colony, Theloria said, her voice shaking. 10,000 Varans live on those mining platforms. They have nowhere else to go. Then they will become subjects of the Catharn Dominion, Vectar replied. We are not unreasonable. We will allow them to continue their work under our administration. They will, of course, pay appropriate taxes. Zelnoth had seen this pattern many times before. The Catharn would occupy the facilities. The Varans would file protests with the Union Council. Eventually, a compromise would be reached, probably splitting the mining rights between both parties. A few ships might be damaged in the initial confrontation, perhaps a dozen casualties at most. Galactic warfare was civilized after all. It had been 12,000 cycles since the last Great War, when the founding species of the Union had nearly destroyed each other. Since then, all member species had agreed to strict protocols for conflict resolution. But then Theloria spoke words that made Zelnoth's antennae stand straight up in surprise. We invoke the right of champion, she said clearly. The communication channels erupted with confusion. The right of champion was an ancient law, dating back to the Union's founding. It allowed a weaker party to hire a champion to fight on their behalf. But it was almost never used because mercenaries capable of changing the outcome of such battles were expensive and rare. No mercenary force of reasonable size could stand against 20 Catharn warships. Commander Vectar laughed, a harsh sound like grinding stones. You have hired mercenaries? How desperate. Very well, Ambassador. We will destroy them along with your ships. Who are these foolish warriors? They call themselves humans, Theloria said quietly. Zelnoth searched his extensive knowledge of Union species. Humans. The name sounded vaguely familiar. Yes, they were a newly discovered species from a small planet on the galactic rim. Their application for Union membership was still being processed. They had only made first contact 5 cycles ago. What could the Varans possibly hope to gain by hiring such primitives? Humans? Vectar's laughter grew louder. I have read the first contact reports. They have barely achieved faster than light travel. Their technology is centuries behind ours. Ambassador, you have wasted your money. Perhaps, Theloria said. There was something in her voice now. Something Zelnoth could not quite identify. Was it hope? Or was it fear? A new signal appeared on the detection grid. A single vessel emerged from faster-than-light travel at the edge of the system. It was smaller than the Catharn battleships, perhaps 300 meters long, with a strange angular design unlike anything in the Galactic Union's fleets. Its hull was dark gray, almost black, with no decorative elements or identifying marks except for letters painted near the bow. TCNS Indomitable. One ship? Vectar's amusement was obvious. The Varans have hired one ship? This is their champion? The human vessel began moving toward the center of the system, accelerating at a rate that made Zelnoth's instruments flash warning alerts. That acceleration should have been impossible for a vessel of that size. The G-forces alone would kill any crew without extremely advanced inertial dampening technology. A communication request came from the human ship. Zelnoth accepted it, curious to see what these humans looked like. The screen showed a woman with short dark hair and brown skin, wearing a fitted uniform of dark blue. Her eyes were forward-facing, predator's eyes, and they held an intensity that made Zelnoth uncomfortable. "I am Captain Sarah Chen of the Terran Colonial Navy ship Indomitable," she said. Her voice was calm, almost casual. "I am here under contract to the Varan Commonwealth. I am authorized to negotiate on their behalf." "There is nothing to negotiate," Vectar said. "You are outnumbered 20-1. Withdraw now and we will allow you to leave this system unharmed." Captain Chen smiled. It was not a friendly expression. Zelnoth noticed that humans had very white teeth, and many of them. Too many teeth, he thought. Predator's teeth. "Commander Vectar, I am offering you one chance to withdraw," Chen said. "Take your fleet and leave Varan space. If you do this, no one needs to die today." The communication channels exploded with reactions. The other observers were shocked. Several of the Catharn officers were making sounds that indicated extreme anger. Commander Vectar's scales flushed dark red. "You dare threaten me?" Vectar shouted. "You command one ship. I will crush you like an insect." "I command one ship," Chen agreed. "And that's all I need." "Commander, I have reviewed the historical records of Galactic Union warfare. I understand that your species is accustomed to certain rules of engagement. Posturing, limited exchanges of fire, negotiated surrenders. That is not how humans fight. If you force me to engage your fleet, I will not stop until every one of your ships is destroyed or disabled. I will show no mercy to vessels that continue to fight. This is your only warning." "Ridiculous," Vectar said. "All ships advance. Destroy that human vessel." Captain Chen's expression did not change. She looked into the camera with those predator's eyes, and Zelnoth felt a chill run through his entire body. "Very well, Commander," Chen said quietly. "We gave you the chance." Indomitable out. The screen went dark. The human ship stopped its approach and seemed to hang motionless in space. The Catharn fleet began moving forward in standard battle formation, weapons charging, shields at maximum power. Zelnoth had witnessed many battles in his long career. He had seen bravery and cowardice, strategy and foolishness, but he had never felt what he felt now, watching that single dark ship waiting silently as 20 larger vessels closed in around it. He had never felt dread. The Catharn fleet moved into attack formation. Commander Vectar was confident. His ships had been built by the finest military engineers in the Dominion. Their shields could withstand anything the Galactic Union's weapons could throw at them. Their plasma cannons could cut through standard armor like it was paper. 20 ships against one was not a battle. It was an execution. High Observer Zelnoth watched from the observation chamber as the Catharn vessels surrounded the human ship on 3 sides, leaving only a path for retreat. This was standard Catharn tactics. They would offer the enemy one final chance to flee, and if that chance was not taken, they would open fire. It was civilized. It was proper. The human ship did not retreat. Instead, it moved. Zelnoth's instruments screamed warnings as the Indomitable accelerated at a rate that should have been physically impossible. The ship went from a dead stop to 0.4 light speed in less than 3 seconds. The G-forces inside that vessel should have turned the crew into liquid. But somehow, impossibly, the human ship was pulling maneuvers that would kill any known species. The Indomitable dove toward the Catharn formation, and Zelnoth expected to see it open communication channels, issue threats, give warnings. That was how civilized warfare worked. You told your enemy what you were going to do. You gave them chances to surrender. The humans did not give warnings. The first Catharn ship, the destroyer Thunder's voice, simply exploded. One moment it was there, shields at full power, weapons charging. The next moment it was a cloud of debris and frozen atmosphere. Zelnoth did not even see what hit it. His instruments registered a massive kinetic impact, something traveling at a significant fraction of light speed. But the projectile was too small and too fast for his sensors to track. "What was that?" one of the other observers shouted. "What just happened?" 3 more Catharn ships died before anyone could answer. The human ship was moving through their formation like a blade through water, and everywhere it went, ships died. Zelnoth finally managed to get his instruments to track the human weapons. They were not energy weapons like plasma cannons or particle beams. They were physical projectiles, solid slugs of metal accelerated to incredible speeds by electromagnetic force. Railguns, his database told him. Primitive kinetic weapons that had not been used in galactic warfare for thousands of cycles. But these railguns were not primitive. The slugs they fired punched through Catharn shields like the shields were not even there. They tore through armor plating, through internal compartments, through reactor cores. Each hit was catastrophic. Each hit was lethal. Commander Vector was screaming orders at his fleet. "Return fire! All ships return fire!" The Catharn ships opened up with their plasma cannons, filling the space around the human vessel with superheated energy. Missiles launched from their tubes, tracking the Indomitable with advanced guidance systems. For a moment, Xel'Nath thought the human ship would be overwhelmed. No vessel could survive that much firepower. But the human ship was not hit. Not once. Point defense systems, small rapid-fire cannons mounted all over the Indomitable's hull, tracked and destroyed every missile before it could reach the ship. Energy weapons that should have burned through armor were deflected by some kind of defensive field. And the human ship kept moving, kept dodging, pulling turns and twists that should have been aerodynamically impossible in the vacuum of space, and it kept killing. 2 more Catharn ships exploded. A third was cut in half by what looked like a laser, but far more powerful than any laser weapon the Galactics used. The beam sliced through the ship's midsection, and both halves tumbled away, leaking atmosphere and bodies. "This is not warfare," one of the observers whispered. "This is slaughter." Xel'Nath could not disagree. In less than 5 minutes, the Catharn had lost 8 ships. 8 ships that had cost millions of credits to build, that carried crews of hundreds. And the human vessel had not even been scratched. Then something small launched from the Indomitable. Dozens of somethings. They were tiny compared to the ships, perhaps 10 meters long, dart-shaped and fast. Fighters, Xel'Nath realized. The humans had fighters. Single-pilot craft that were even faster and more maneuverable than the main ship. The fighters swarmed over the Catharn vessels like insects, targeting weapon systems, engine clusters, shield generators. They were so small and so fast that the Catharn point defenses could not track them. And they carried weapons, too. Smaller railguns and missiles that could not destroy a ship by themselves but could cripple it. Commander Vector's command ship, the Crimson Talon, tried to retreat. It turned away from the battle, engines at full power trying to reach the minimum safe distance for faster-than-light travel. 3 of the human fighters pursued it. They did not shoot at the engines. Instead, they targeted the ship's communication arrays, its sensor pods, its external weapons. They stripped the Crimson Talon of its ability to fight or coordinate the fleet, and then the Indomitable arrived. The human ship positioned itself directly in front of the Crimson Talon, blocking its escape. Captain Chen's voice came over the communication channels, and there was no emotion in it at all. She sounded like she was reading a weather report. "Commander Vector, your shields are down. Your weapons are offline. You have 10 seconds to broadcast a fleet-wide surrender or I will destroy your ship." "You cannot do this," Vector shouted. "This violates every convention of civilized warfare. We are protected by—" 5 seconds. Behind the Crimson Talon, 2 more Catharn ships exploded as they tried to come to their commander's aid. The human fighters had planted explosives on their reactor cores. "You are monsters," Vector screamed. 2 seconds, I surrender!" The words came out in a rush. "I surrender. All ships, cease fire. Cease fire immediately." The battle stopped. The silence that followed was terrible. Xel'Nath looked at his casualty reports and could not believe what he was seeing. 15 Catharn ships destroyed. Completely destroyed, not disabled or damaged, but turned into clouds of wreckage. The remaining 5 ships were crippled. Their weapons gone, their shields down, hanging in space like wounded animals. The human ship had not been hit. Not once. The fighters were returning to the Indomitable, docking smoothly as if they had just completed a training exercise. Captain Chen's voice filled the communication channels again. "Catharn vessels, you will jettison all remaining weapons and ammunition. You will provide coordinates for any other military installations in this system. You will then leave Varen space and not return. If any Catharn military vessel enters this system again, it will be destroyed without warning. These terms are not negotiable." Commander Vector, his voice broken and defeated, agreed to everything. High Observer Xel'Nath watched as the Catharn fleet, once so proud and confident, limped away from the battlefield. He turned to look at Ambassador Theleria on the communication screen. The young Varen was crying, but Zelnoth could not tell if the tears were from relief or horror. "Ambassador," Zelnoth said slowly, "what have you brought to our galaxy?" Theloria did not answer. She just stared at the human ship, floating alone among the wreckage of 15 destroyed vessels. Captain Chen sent one final message before the Indomitable left the system. It was addressed to the Galactic Union Council, to all the observers, to everyone who had witnessed what happened. "You hired us to be champions," she said. "We are not champions. We are soldiers. Remember that." The screen went dark, and High Observer Zelnoth began composing his report to the Council. He had no idea what to write. How could he explain what he had just witnessed? How could he make them understand? The humans had not come to participate in galactic warfare. They had come to show the galaxy what real war looked like, and Zelnoth realized with a deep and terrible certainty that everything was about to change. The emergency session of the Galactic Union Council was the most heavily attended in 3,000 cycles. Representatives from all 47 member species crowded into the Great Chamber on Unity Station, their voices creating a cacophony of confusion, fear, and anger. High Observer Zelnoth stood at the central podium, his report displayed on screens around the chamber, showing the destruction of the Catharn fleet in brutal detail. "This cannot stand," Ambassador Krevnal of the Catharn Dominion declared, his scales flushed dark with rage. "These humans are war criminals. They must be expelled from civilized space, their mercenary operations banned, their ships forbidden from entering Union territory." "They saved my people," Ambassador Theloria said quietly. She looked smaller somehow, younger, sitting in her delegation seat. "The Catharn would have conquered our colony, displaced thousands of civilians. The humans prevented that by committing mass murder," Krevnal shouted. 15 ships destroyed. 4,000 Catharn dead for what? A mining dispute that could have been resolved through diplomacy. "Your fleet refused to leave when ordered," Theloria replied, her voice steady despite her obvious discomfort. Captain Chen gave Commander Vectar a chance to withdraw. He chose to fight instead. The council chambers erupted in argument. Some species supported the Catharn, horrified by the violence they had witnessed. Others, smaller species who had been bullied by larger neighbors for centuries, saw opportunity in the humans' demonstration of power. And some, like Zelnoth's own people, simply wanted to understand who these humans were and what they wanted. Council leader Orenseth, a Talvarian whose species had founded the Union 12,000 cycles ago, raised one of his forearms for silence. His skin displayed patterns of deep concern, colors shifting across his body, in the way his species expressed complex emotions. "We have dispatched our best xenoanthropologists, military analysts, and historians to study humanity," Orenseth said. "Their preliminary reports have just arrived. I believe we should review them before making any decisions." A holographic display activated in the center of the chamber, showing images and data about humanity and their homeworld, Earth. Zelnoth felt his compound eyes widen as he read the information. This could not be correct. The numbers made no sense. Humanity evolved on a planet they call Earth, the lead xenoanthropologist Dr. Tavrin explained. She was a Varan like Theloria, but much older, her skin marked with the dark blue patterns of advanced age. "The planet is classified as a level 9 death world by our standards. Gravity is 1.2 times galactic standard. Atmospheric pressure is high. Weather patterns are violent and unpredictable. The planet is home to millions of predator species, many of them megafauna that evolved alongside humans." Images flashed across the screens. Massive carnivores with enormous teeth, venomous creatures, parasites, diseases. The assembled delegates stared in horror. No civilized species evolved on worlds like this. Most of the Union's members came from gentle planets with limited predators and abundant resources. "Humans are persistence hunters," Dr. Tavrin continued. "Their ancestors would chase prey for days until the animal collapsed from exhaustion. They have greater stamina than any other known species. They can survive injuries that would kill most of us. Their psychology is adapted for constant threat assessment and violence. But surely," one of the delegates said, "they must have become more peaceful as they developed civilization? As they created technology and culture?" Dr. Tavrin's expression was grim. "No, if anything, they became more efficient at warfare. We have reviewed their history. In the past 10,000 cycles, humanity has been engaged in warfare, 98% of the time. Not ritualized combat like ours. Totalva. Conflicts where entire populations were targeted. Where surrender was often not accepted. Where the goal was complete destruction of the enemy. More images appeared on the screens. Vast armies stretching across continents. Cities burning. Weapons that could level entire regions. The delegates watched in silence as Dr. Tavern showed them recordings from human history. Conflicts they called the World Wars, where millions died. Where chemical weapons dissolved soldiers' lungs. Where nuclear weapons vaporized entire cities. They used nuclear weapons, someone whispered, on their own planet. Against their own species. Twice, Dr. Tavern confirmed. And those were small weapons compared to what they developed later. Humanity created enough nuclear weapons to destroy every living thing on their planet, dozens of times over. They call this strategy mutually assured destruction. The idea that no one would start a war because everyone would die. That is insane, Ambassador Krevnal said. But his voice had lost its anger. Now he just sounded afraid. From our perspective, yes, Dr. Tavern agreed. But it worked. They did not destroy themselves. Instead, they directed that violence outward, toward space. They have fought wars on asteroids on moons in the orbits of their own planets. They have practiced evacuating their entire homeworld in case of attack. They have protocols for surviving planetary bombardment. Zelnoth raised one of his manipulator arms. Doctor, you mentioned they have rules for warfare. The Geneva Conventions, I believe they call them? Yes, Dr. Tavern said. She paused, and when she spoke again, her voice was very quiet. That is perhaps the most disturbing thing of all. Humanity has rules forbidding certain weapons, certain tactics. Chemical weapons are banned. Biological weapons are banned. Weapons that cause unnecessary suffering are banned. The targeting of civilians is banned. But that sounds civilized, another delegate said, confused. It sounds civilized, Zelnoth said slowly, until you realize why they needed those rules. They had to stop themselves from doing those things, which means at some point they were doing them. The chamber fell silent. The implications settled over the assembled delegates like a heavy weight. Humanity had not just fought wars. They had fought wars so terrible, so brutal, that they had to create rules to limit their own violence. And even with those rules, they were still more deadly than anything the Galactic Union had ever seen. They are monsters, someone said. They are survivors, another voice replied. There is a difference. The debate might have continued for hours, but suddenly, alarms began sounding throughout the station. Emergency broadcasts activated on every screen, overriding the council's displays. High Observer Zelnoth felt his body go cold as he read the incoming reports. 3 Union colony worlds had gone silent in the past 6 hours. No communications, no distress signals, nothing. Scout ships sent to investigate had found the colonies destroyed, stripped bare of all resources, populations gone, and moving through that region of space was a massive fleet of unknown vessels. Thousands of ships, all heading toward the core systems of the Union. The Ravagers, Council Leader Orenseth said, his skin pattern showing pure fear. They have returned. The Ravagers were an extragalactic species that had been attacking Union space for centuries. They were locusts consuming everything in their path and leaving dead worlds behind. The Union had fought them 12 times and lost 12 times. Galactic warfare with its rules and protocols, its limited casualties and negotiated surrenders, was useless against an enemy that took no prisoners and showed no mercy. The Union had always survived the Ravagers by retreating, by abandoning worlds and hoping the invaders would eventually move on. But this fleet was different. It was larger than any they had seen before, and it was heading directly toward the most populated region of the galaxy. Ambassador Theloria stood up. Her voice was clear and steady when she spoke. Perhaps it is time we let the humans show us how they really fight. The chamber erupted in argument once more. But Zelnoth noticed that this time, more delegates were nodding in agreement. The Ravagers were coming. Traditional galactic warfare had never stopped them. Maybe it was time to try something different. Maybe it was time to unleash the humans and see what they could do against an enemy that did not follow the rules. The vote was called. It was not unanimous, but it was decisive. The Council would offer humanity full membership in the Union, along with trade agreements and colonization rights, in exchange for dealing with the Ravager threat. Zelnoth wondered if they were making a deal with devils to fight demons. He supposed they would find out soon enough. The Ravager fleet moved through Union space like a plague. They had destroyed 6 colony worlds now, and the refugee crisis was overwhelming. Billions of civilians were fleeing toward the core systems, cramming onto transport ships, abandoning homes their families had lived in for generations. Union military forces attempted to slow the Ravagers down, but it was like trying to stop a tsunami with a bucket. The Ravagers did not fight like civilized species. They swarmed, they overwhelmed, they showed no mercy. High Observer Zelnoth was aboard Unity Station when the human response fleet arrived. He had expected a few ships, perhaps a dozen at most. What emerged from faster-than-light travel at the edge of the system took his breath away. 50 human battleships, each as large or larger than the TCNS Indomitable. Carriers that launched fighters by the hundreds, destroyers and cruisers moving in perfect formation, and at the center of it all, a vessel that made everything else look small by comparison. The dreadnought Unconquered was nearly 2 kilometers long, bristling with weapons, its dark hull marked with scars from battles the humans had already fought. "This is Admiral Marcus Reeves of the Terran Colonial Navy," a voice announced across all channels. The man who appeared on the screens was older than Captain Chen, his hair gray, his face lined with experience. But his eyes held the same predator's focus, the same deadly certainty. "We are here to deal with the Ravager threat. All Union forces are to fall back to defensive positions around inhabited worlds. We will handle the offensive operations." "Admiral," Council Leader Orenseth replied, "we appreciate your assistance, but our intelligence indicates the Ravager fleet numbers over 4,000 vessels. Your 50 ships, impressive as they are, cannot—" "With respect, Council Leader," Reeves interrupted, "we did not come here to participate in your style of warfare. We came here to end the Ravager threat permanently. Now please, clear the space around Kirshan. We have work to do." Kirshan was an agricultural world with a population of 2 billion. It was directly in the path of the Ravager fleet, and evacuation was impossible. There was not enough time, not enough ships. The Union had already begun writing it off as a loss, a sacrifice to buy time for other worlds to prepare their defenses. The humans had other plans. Zelnoth watched from his observation post as the human fleet moved into position around Kirshan. But they did not deploy in standard defensive formations. Instead, they spread out across the system, seemingly at random. Some ships moved behind the planet's moons. Others positioned themselves near asteroid fields. A few simply hung in deep space, their weapons powered down, looking like they were waiting for something. "What are they doing?" Ambassador Krevnal demanded. "They are not even in formation. The Ravagers will tear them apart." But Admiral Reeves was doing something that no Union commander had ever done. He was not waiting to react to the enemy. He was preparing a trap. Human ships deployed strange devices throughout the system, small objects no larger than fighters that floated silently in space. Zelnoth's instruments identified them as mines, but unlike any mines he had seen before. These were nuclear weapons, fusion bombs with yields large enough to vaporize ships. "Barbaric," someone muttered. "Nuclear weapons are forbidden in civilized warfare." "The Ravagers are not civilized," Admiral Reeves said calmly. He had apparently been listening to the Council's private channels. "And neither are we. Not when our survival is at stake." The human fleet began manufacturing more weapons right there in the system. They captured asteroids and converted them into forward operating bases. Automated factories stripped the rock for raw materials and began producing ammunition, missiles, more mines. In just 6 hours, the humans had created a weapons production line that would have taken Union species months to establish. And then the Ravagers arrived. Their fleet was exactly as the reports had described. Thousands of ships, organic-looking things that seemed to be grown rather than built, covered in spines and weapon pods. They moved in a swarm, with no apparent organization or strategy beyond overwhelming their targets with sheer numbers. Admiral Reeves waited until the Ravager fleet was fully committed to the system, until they had passed the point where faster-than-light travel was safe. Then he gave the order that changed everything. "All units execute Operation Killing Field. Light them up." The nuclear mines detonated. Space became fire. Hundreds of fusion explosions bloomed throughout the Ravager formation, each one vaporizing dozens of ships. The Ravagers had shields, but they were designed to stop energy weapons and kinetic projectiles, not nuclear explosions at point-blank range. Ships simply ceased to exist, torn apart at the atomic level. But the mines were just the beginning. The human battleships emerged from their hiding spots, weapons firing. Railguns hurled projectiles at relativistic speeds, turning enemy vessels into clouds of shrapnel. Missile pods launched thousands of warheads, each one programmed to hunt specific targets. Laser arrays, far more powerful than anything the Union used, cut through Ravager hulls like they were made of paper. The human fighters launched from their carriers, and Zelnoth realized that these pilots were insane. They were not trying to disable enemy ships or force surrenders. They were ramming them. When their ammunition ran out, when their weapons failed, the human pilots simply accelerated their fighters to maximum speed and crashed them into Ravager vessels, turning themselves into kinetic weapons. Why would they do that? Ambassador Theloria whispered, her voice horrified. Why would they sacrifice themselves? Because they can always build more fighters, Admiral Reeves said, having heard the question. But they can't allow even one Ravager ship to reach Kirshan. The lives of 2 billion people are worth more than a few dozen pilots. They know this. They volunteered for this. The battle raged for 6 hours. The Ravagers tried to adapt, tried to change their tactics, but the humans had planned for everything. When Ravager ships attempted to retreat, they found that the humans had mined the escape routes. When they tried to spread out, human destroyers picked them off in small groups. When they tried to group together for mutual protection, the battleships hit them with weapons Zelnoth had no names for. Kinetic kill vehicles, tungsten rods accelerated to 90% of light speed, struck Ravager capital ships and went straight through them like bullets through tissue. And the humans employed psychological warfare. They broadcast signals on all frequencies, sounds that seemed designed to terrify. The screams of dying Ravagers recorded from previous battles. Warnings in every language telling the survivors that they would all die, that there was no escape, that humanity would hunt them down no matter where they fled. It was brutal. It was efficient. It was absolutely terrifying. When the battle ended, the Ravager fleet had been annihilated. 4,000 ships reduced to wreckage and radiation. Only 200 escaped, their hulls damaged, their systems failing, limping toward the galactic rim. The human fleet had lost 3 ships. 47 people had died, most of them the fighter pilots who had sacrificed themselves. Admiral Reeves addressed the Union Council, and his expression was cold. We have destroyed the Ravager fleet at Kirshan, but we are not done. Those ships that escaped will report back to their homeworld. They will tell the Ravagers that humanity is here, so we are going to make sure the message is very clear. We are going to follow them home, and we are going to destroy every Ravager shipyard, every military installation, every resource depot they have. We are going to make sure they never threaten the Union again. That is genocide, Ambassador Krevnal said, but his voice was weak. The complete destruction of a species. No, Admiral Reeves corrected. That would be genocide. What we are going to do is disarmament. We will destroy their military capability, nothing more. Any Ravager who surrenders, who abandons warfare, will be allowed to live in peace. But their days of conquest are over. High Observer Zelnoth watched as the human fleet began pursuing the fleeing Ravagers. He turned to Council Leader Orin Seth, and he saw his own thoughts reflected in the leader's shifting skin patterns. They had not seen humans at war. They had seen humans being restrained, showing mercy, fighting by their own rules, and even restrained, even merciful. Humanity was more deadly than anything the galaxy had ever known. What would they be like if they decided to stop holding back? 6 months after the Battle of Kirshan, the Galactic Union was a different place. Human ships patrolled the major trade routes, their dark hulls a constant reminder of the new power that had entered galactic politics. Admiral Reeves had been true to his word. His fleet had tracked down the Ravagers, destroyed their shipyards and military installations, and forced a complete disarmament. The species that had terrorized the galaxy for centuries was now contained to their home system, forbidden from building warships, monitored constantly by human satellites. The smaller species of the Union celebrated. For the first time in living memory, they felt safe. Refugee populations began returning to their worlds. Trade routes that had been too dangerous to use for years were now secure. Humanity was hailed as saviors, liberators, protectors of the weak, but not everyone was celebrating. High Observer Zelnoth sat in his observation chamber, reviewing reports from across the galaxy. Human corporations were establishing trade agreements with dozens of species. Human colonists were settling new worlds at a rate that alarmed many of the older Union members, and human military vessels were everywhere, always watching, always ready. The Catharn Dominion had been the most vocal in their opposition to humanity's growing influence. Ambassador Krevnal demanded restrictions on human military power, limits on their expansion, controls on their weapons development. He found support among several of the larger species, those who had been accustomed to being the dominant powers in their regions. Captain Sarah Chen had returned to Unity Station, no longer commanding a warship, but serving as humanity's primary ambassador. Zelnoth had requested a private meeting with her, and she had agreed. They sat now in a small diplomatic lounge, just the two of them, and Zelnoth studied this human woman who had changed everything. "You know that many species fear you," Zelnoth said. "They are grateful for what you did against the Ravagers, but they worry about what comes next. They see your ships, your weapons, your willingness to use violence, and they wonder if you will become the next threat." Chen nodded slowly. She was drinking something called coffee, a human beverage that Zelnoth's research indicated was mildly addictive and contained stimulants. "I understand their fear, but they need to understand something about humanity. We evolved on a world that was trying to kill us every day. We learned to fight because we had to. We learned to be brutal because mercy got you killed. But you have moved beyond that world," Zelnoth argued. "You have achieved space travel, advanced technology, civilization. Surely you can move beyond violence as well." Chen smiled, but it was not a happy expression. "Observer, do you know why humans created rules for warfare? The Geneva Conventions, the laws about chemical weapons and targeting civilians? Because you wanted to be more civilized." "No," Chen said. "Because we had already done those things and we saw what they led to. We created rules to limit our own violence because we knew exactly how terrible we could be. Every one of those rules exists because at some point in our history, humans did something so awful that we decided we could never do it again." Zelnoth felt his compound eyes widen. "You are saying that what we saw at Kirshan, the destruction of the Ravager fleet, that was humanity being restrained?" "That was humanity following our rules of engagement for conflicts against hostile species," Chen confirmed. "We gave warnings. We accepted surrenders from ships that stopped fighting. We limited our weapons to those necessary to achieve our objectives. Yes, observer, that was us being restrained. What would you be like if you were not restrained?" Chen's expression went cold. "You do not want to know, and you should hope you never find out." Their conversation was interrupted by alarms blaring throughout the station. Zelnoth's communication device activated, showing an emergency broadcast from the council chambers. His body went numb as he read the message. The Catharn Dominion had launched an attack on Earth itself. Commander Vectar, the same officer who had been defeated at Varan Space, had gathered a secret fleet of 100 ships, the largest military force the Catharn had assembled in centuries. They had waited until most human military assets were deployed across the galaxy, then struck at humanity's homeworld, attempting to destroy the species at its source. Chen was on her feet immediately, already accessing communication channels. "How many ships do we have in the Sol system?" "According to our intelligence, very few," Zelnoth said. "The Catharn chose their timing well. Most of your fleet is—" "How many Catharn ships are left?" Chen interrupted. Zelnoth checked the incoming reports. His body began to relax as he read them. "None. The attack has been repelled. All Catharn vessels have been destroyed. All of them, all 100 ships. They managed to reach Earth's orbit, but they were met by automated defense platforms and civilian ships that had been converted to military use. 3 human defense fleets arrived shortly after and eliminated the survivors." Chen closed her eyes, and for a moment, Zelnoth saw something that looked like relief. Then her expression hardened, and she opened a communication channel directly to Admiral Reeves. "Admiral, I need authorization for Operation Accountability." "Granted," Reeves replied immediately. "Rules of engagement are as follows. Military disarmament only. No targeting of civilians, no biological or chemical weapons, no orbital bombardment of population centers. But Chen, make it clear. Make it very clear." "Understood, sir." Chen turned to Zelnoth, and he saw in her eyes the same predator's focus she had shown before the battle at Varan Space. "Observer, I need you to broadcast a message to the Union Council. Tell them that humanity is invoking Article 12 of the Union Charter. The Catharn Dominion attacked our homeworld without provocation, attempting to commit genocide. This is not a military dispute. This is a response to an existential threat. What are you going to do? Zelnoth asked, though he already knew the answer. We are going to remove the Catharn Dominion as a military power. Permanently. The council session that followed was chaotic. Ambassador Krevnal claimed that Commander Vektar had acted without authorization, that the Catharn government had not approved the attack. But Chen presented evidence, intercepted communications showing that the Dominion's leadership had known about the plan and approved it. You attacked our home, Chen said, her voice echoing through the chamber. You tried to kill billions of humans, including children, civilians, people who had never raised a weapon against you. You did this because you were afraid of us, because you could not accept that you were no longer the dominant power in your region. So now, we will ensure you can never threaten anyone again. This is tyranny, Krevnal shouted. You cannot simply dismantle our government, strip us of our military, occupy our worlds. We can, Chen replied. And we will. The Catharn Dominion is dissolved as of this moment. Your military vessels will be destroyed or surrendered. Your weapons manufacturing will be shut down. Your government will be reformed under Union supervision, and you will never again have the capability to threaten another species. The Council will never approve this, Krevnal said, but his voice had lost its strength. Council leader Orenseth rose, his skin displaying patterns of deep sadness. The Council has already voted. The motion passes by a margin of 38-9. Humanity is authorized to take all necessary measures to ensure the Catharn Dominion no longer poses a threat to galactic peace. The Catharn delegation left the chamber, and Zelnoth could see the defeat in their postures. They had gambled everything on a preemptive strike against humanity, and they had lost completely. Over the next 3 months, human fleets dismantled Catharn military power. Shipyards were destroyed. Weapons stockpiles were confiscated. The Dominion's government was reorganized, with Union oversight ensuring they could not rebuild their military. It was done efficiently with minimal casualties, but it was absolute. Chen retired from active military service after that, remaining as humanity's ambassador to the Union. Zelnoth met with her one final time before she took up her new permanent post. You have changed the galaxy, Zelnoth said. Peace is no longer maintained through protocols and civilization. It is enforced through strength and the threat of violence. Peace was always enforced through strength, Chen replied. You just had the luxury of not needing much strength because everyone agreed to follow the rules. But the Ravagers did not follow your rules. The Catharn did not follow your rules when they thought they could win. Real peace is not about everyone agreeing to be nice. Real peace is about making sure no one can profit from violence. So humans will be the enforcers? The guardians of galactic peace? For now, Chen said. Until other species develop the capability to defend themselves. We will share our technology, train your military forces, help you become strong enough that you do not need us. But yes, for now, humans will make sure that species who want to live in peace can do so without fear. Zelnoth looked out at the stars, at the galaxy that humanity had changed forever. And if humanity ever decides to conquer us, if you decide that you want to rule the galaxy instead of protecting it,